Hi, in this demonstration, we're going to walk you through an introduction to Mingle Plus, which is centered around program management, and really walk you through how we can organize many projects into a single program using Mingle Plus. Let's take a look at the multi-channel retailer program. You'll see this consists of a backlog, a plan, and 3 projects: the iOS project, the Android project, and the web services project. Each of those 3 projects happen to be a unique team organized into a project that are all collaborating against this program, the multi-channel retailer program. Let's take a closer look. Each program has a backlog. This would contain higher level objectives for planning purposes, and then a plan which consists of a timeline where you can execute against the objectives. Now let's take a look at the timeline view underneath the planning element within Mingle Plus. You'll see here up in the top right, I've configured it to show the months of October through May, and today's date is highlighted with the yellow line over in the middle of the screen. And I have 3 objectives on this timeline. The point of sale integration has 8 of 8 stories complete. Then the wish list over here on the right has 16 of 21 stories complete. Now let's take a look at the alert presented on the wish list objective. You'll see here I have a warning, and what that is presenting to the user is that this objective may not complete by that end date. And then the loyalty rewards program objective has not been actively worked just yet. Now let's take a look at the details of the wish list objective. You can see the beginning and the end date of this objective. So slated to begin in December 29th through February 22nd. And now there are 3 teams that are actually working the active work items, the 21 work items. So the Android team is working 5 of 8. The iOS team is currently at 5 of 6 work items. And then the web services team is at 6 of 7. And each of these teams is presenting a burn-up chart. Now let's take a look at the burn-up chart with forecasting to see how the iOS team is progressing against the wish list objective. The y-axis here is presenting the total count by work item, and then the x-axis is dates. So you can see the scale from 0 to 8 of work items, and then across the x-axis going out through March. And then the blue line actually represents work being done, and the gray line, the 6, represents the total scope. We can see the progress being made against this work, and then forecasting out towards the right, this first date, the February 15th date, is if there is 0 scope change. So this is forecasting based off of that rate of work. The 27th February date is if there's 50% increase in scope change. And then the much further out to the right date, the March 22nd date, is if there's a 150% increase in scope change. So to summarize, the forecasting chart for the iOS team shows us work completed, the total scope, and it also shows us best and worst case as far as completion date goes. Now we can look at the wish list objective, but we can look at the teams independently. And here I see that the Android team, currently at 5 of 8 complete, they're not tracking. Let's take a look at the chart. Here we see that they're tracking to an April 3rd date, which doesn't coincide with the end date. Now let's take a look at the web services team, and quickly we can see that they're tracking to a February 15th date. The February 15th date coincides with this February 22nd date, and so they are tracking. Now let's take a look at the objective backlog where we can capture these ideas and prioritize these within that program. Here is a place where we can capture and prioritize objectives. You can see a few here, and each have some value, size, and a ratio. Let's take a look at the gift registry. Here we have a high value, a small size, and if I adjust that, it will adjust the ratio automatically. You can see as I move that back and forth. And this will allow us to essentially pull on some levers to evaluate and prioritize objectives. Once we determine the ratio, whether it's a good ratio or poor ratio, we can reprioritize the objectives and I'll drag and drop the gift registry up here towards the top, just because it has a high ratio, a good ratio. Let me adjust the size here. We like that ratio, so let's go ahead and drag this up to the top. We can do this as a very easy drag and drop interface. Now let's take a look at the value statement. The value statement will provide more context around the details of the objective. And now I'm going to plan this against the timeline. This moves it from the backlog and allows you to plan a start and end date, so I can drag and drop this to push the start date out much further to the right. And then I can drag the end of this objective out to the right if I wanted to give us more time to complete this objective. And now I'm going to click on the objective to add work to the gift registry. Now I can add work, and I'll select the projects to add work from. Let's take a look at the Android project, and I'll use a few of the filters, first filtering on type user story, and then selecting the gift registry feature. And I can do that using the common filters here. And in this example, I'm going to select all of those stories and automatically synchronize those between the project and the timeline. In summary, I covered the basics around Mingle Plus and how teams and projects are organized under a program within Mingle, and then how we can capture and prioritize objectives, plan those against the timeline, and then how we can use the burn-up charts with forecasting to track a team's progress against those objectives and really understand and have the visibility to understand if a team is progressing as planned. Thank you.